Thank you, everyone, for joining our second session of the Adapt, Pivot, and Persist series. This is a four-part series of career reinvention amidst recent climate that's happening in the world, in our country. And today we are focused on pivoting and rebranding. In our first session, we talked about changing our mindsets for forward movement. Now we're focusing on those actionable, tactical ways of making that pivot and rebrand. I'm Michelle Jones. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Career Education and Life Design here at the Cary Business School. And I'm going to be co-presenting today with my colleague, Yassir. And I'll let Yassir take it from here and introduce himself.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Yassir Kurd. I'm the Director of Life Design and Graduate Programming, so pretty much overseeing the students studying at advanced academic programs over the career and Whiting School of Engineering. So I'm very excited for this session. We're going to be focusing on, like Michelle said, pivoting and rebranding. So pivoting is my part. So let's get started. So first off, like what we're going to cover on my section, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the designer mindset and how it can really help you throughout your process of pivoting and branding. And we have function, industry, and geography, which is called FIG scenarios. How the FIG like really is helping you to get your competitive edges is because you need to leverage your competitive edges throughout this process to impress your future employers pretty much. And last but not least, talking about that, the action plan, it's super important. So designer mindset, here at JHU, Michelle and I, in our pretty much like day-to-day work, like we are preaching and also we're practicing in our, I believe, the professional and personal lives, have to be a designer based on the life design, the framework and then design thinking process. So this is, you can see on the screen, hopefully if you are joining and then seeing the screen, but the guiding mindsets of the designer. I believe it's very important to have such mindsets is because it's like really helping you to think outside the box and sometimes like seeing that connections and then like really getting that, the dots connected, if you will. So the first thing first is curiosity. So what we are preaching pretty much and practicing in our work, the curiosity is super important. And even sometimes I go a step further and you have to be curious to be curious. So the curiosity is important. You have to ask like really great questions, meaningful questions, and then you should be open to learn. You should be open to explore what is out there for you. I believe that the folks right now in this call, again, either you got impacted by executive orders or you're a student and you have to change pretty much your career path with your, first job. That curiosity is very important. So what we pretty much, suggesting you maybe pause on like, passion, always like talking about, oh, I'm passionate about this. How about if we just like change that mindset more on curiosity side of the house to explore things, trying out things. So action bias towards the keep thinking. So some of us, I'm sure that, we've been in a situation where I have $1 billion idea. That idea is like really great, but if you don't go ahead and then take an action, it's gonna be like really on the clouds and, you're gonna be like, the joining million other people that they have great ideas, but they never tried out. So what we're proposing with the designing or designer mindset and the design thinking process to be ready to not, the focus on more thinking, but go and then do the things. So today is the day. We always say that take an action, whatever it is on your end, maybe researching something, maybe reaching out some colleagues and trying to understand what's going on their lives, and then you share your journey. But again, action, it could be small. It doesn't have to be, something big. So do it together. Again, you join today is because you don't want to go through this journey alone. And then you want to get that social support and you want to learn from Michelle and I and then your colleagues, your peers. So exactly the same mindset. So you have to understand how powerful networking is, that social support you need. And then what we've been noticing nowadays, kind of like what happened during the COVID, the times, folks are ready to help each other. I promise you, there are so many people out there. If you reach out, they're going to be going above and beyond to offer you that help. So have that mindset, radical collaboration. Go in and ask people. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't hesitate to ask for help. That is the entire point. Last but not least is prototyping. So some of us might be like really having that mindset, whatever I do, it has to be perfect, is because I'm a perfectionist. But how about if we change that mindset more? Oh, I'm gonna try things out, and whatever it works, and I'm gonna just like follow that patterns. What is working, what is not working. So try things out, and today is the day again. So testing things out, that is the prototyping. It's very important. Later on, I'm gonna talk about that, how you can use prototyping mindset when you even creating your resumes, and then when you are having your pitch and showing your value proposition. This wasn't part of my the slides until just like 2-3 days ago. I saw these post on LinkedIn, and then again, I don't know if every single one of you can see the screen or not. Sometimes people like joining from their phone and then only like listen. That's why maybe I need to just explain you what's going on here. But this is from Steve Dalton, one of like really the most, I believe, respected the career coaches out there. And then he was like talking about this, the client he had. So he applied this, consulting firm and didn't hear anything. But later on, he just like changed the mindset and then started reaching out, the employers and companies. So this consulting firm, this person applied, a few months ago, was one of those, the firms just follow up and then had an informational interview, someone insider, and then that lead to having a screening call, then a formal interview, then the final interview, and voila, this person got a job. And then everything happened in a month. That is also amazing, right? And the next day, there was this LinkedIn post says, this candidate received an email from this firm. Hey, thank you for your application, but we cannot move forward. But actually, this person got the job already. So it's like very interesting. But what is like really the moral of the story? You will be two different candidates if you do not understand the power of curiosity conversations, informational interviews, the power of networking. So please just focus on networking and intentional application, rather going just like really submitting your application, which is sometimes we use, blind application or unintentional application, or just like really hitting the enter. There are so many ways I believe career coaches use that. So I really want to spend some time, perhaps maybe like 5-10 minutes, like really quickly. But again, I don't want to just rush, if you will. So the importance of journey. Every single one of us in this call, including Michelle and I, which is, we are the experts in this field, our journey will be quite different. Is because, again, this is not a race and everyone has their own the path, and some people might be starting in this journey the middle, the stage, and then some people like start from the scratch, depending on where you're at in your journey, how many years of experience you have, and then if you're already checking the box for some of like the stages on the journey. What I'm proposing you today, I created, but I can say that I validated this working with like thousands and thousands of students in the last so many years. But this is a career life design journey, 9 stages. So the first thing first, like I need to share with you, when I was, the questioning students to better understand what is like really the job search process they were going through, or what is the mindset shift when they are transitioning from role to role, like the pivoting, I always got the same answer regardless of who the person was. I apply. I use LinkedIn, I use this job board, and then I have my resume and cover letter in hand, and then I go in and submit my application. As you can see, that application in my process, second from last, like really the stage 8. So we have to go through the process. Let's get in. The first thing is value proposition. So perhaps like this is mostly used in corporate world, but I'm sure that you know what it is, but I'm gonna do my best to explain like really quickly. Value proposition is like in a simple terms, what you bring into table and how you like really stand out when you're comparing yourself the rest of the candidates in this candidate pile or candidate pool. A value proposition, to know what your value proposition is and then what that unique contribution you bring into any employers, you have to ask yourself so many questions. Some of those I'm sure that you have known and then been asking yourself what I'm good at it, my skills, my passion and such. But have you ever asked yourself, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? Hey, Yasi, what is the problem that really you're trying to solve? Right now, you're in a situation that you have to pivot. But maybe I need to pause. I've been working in this field for 10, 15, 20 years. But what is the problem that I'm trying to solve. So that could be sound like a little bit more philosophical question or existential. I promise you that is not. It is a very simple question about your career and life design journey. What is that problem? So ask yourself that question. That will be super powerful. And that will let you to know your competitive edges. I believe that the professional brand is the best way for me to explain how that value proposition looks like. Whoever you're following on LinkedIn, go in and look at that person LinkedIn profile and headline. And then that person is going to be telling you who they are, what they've been doing, and then what they are trying to do, and then what are like some of like the future goals. That is pretty much the value proposition that they are giving to the LinkedIn platform. Professional brand. So in that sense, what is like really my brand that I want folks to know me about? You know that very famous saying that your brand is when you are not in the room, what people are talking about you. And then I'm suggesting you the same thing. Go in and create that LinkedIn. Hopefully you have a strong one, a really polished one. But your headline should be already giving your value proposition, and then your entire LinkedIn should be showing who you are as a professional. So professional brand is super important. From the other mindset, how many people know who you are? Your family members, extended family, cousins, the colleagues and peers. Maybe you had undergrads, the masters and PhDs. You studied for years and years. All those people, the faculty, maybe 5,000. But LinkedIn is giving you opportunity to have like even millions in case. Not necessarily I'm encouraging you to be an influencer on LinkedIn, but really to know and then understand how that social media channels or networking channels can help you to build that strong professional brand. And research. The research based on your value proposition, you need to ask yourself this question. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? And if there is any employer out there, they've been trying to solve the same problem. I'm going to repeat this one more time. What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And then are there any employers out there have been trying to solve this problem? This is super important. This is how you're going to be pretty much create the list of employers, which I'm going to touch base later on. You need to research. I've been asking this question to my students, the people that I've been working with, like, again, some of them career transitioners and career advancers like yourself. Who are the employers that you want to work with, and then why? And then after like 10, 15, in their list, maybe 10 to 15 employers, they get stuck. They don't know that there are like so many out there. So my suggestion, try to like really use like any sources. Again, the Google, ChatGPT, LinkedIn, whatever you are using in your terms, industry, but you need to explore that employers a little bit. And my suggestion is maybe start with, 5, 5, 5, 5, like 4 different clusters. Most, the interested to the less interested. And then again, the focus should be value aligned, your value and employer's value. The second piece of research, you need to search for folks to know the internal, the employees. Why? I'm going back to this LinkedIn. Remember this candidate, 2 different candidates. If you really research those people, you're going to be in a good situation is because you can ask them for curiosity conversations. So our third and fourth step, once you have the employers and then the people working in these employers, you're going to be reaching out to those people for curiosity conversations. The book says you have to have 1 per employers, organizations. So if that case, if you have like 20 employers in your list, we're looking at 20 curiosity conversations. In a very simple term, what we're asking people, their journey, what they are enjoying to do at their work, and the culture of the organization, the team dynamics, and how their journey in their maybe, the masters and bachelors, whatever, like, again, your studies and your industry looks like, asking all that meaningful questions. We never ever ask for jobs. I'm sure that you know it, but again, I'm just like throwing out there. Then we have self-reflection. I believe that for folks in this call, curiosity, conversation, and self-reflection will be really critical, of course, like value proposition and brand. But why is because based on my conversation with this so many thousands of students, I've been always hearing the same thing. I didn't know this about company X until I had curiosity conversation with someone internal. Or I never heard about like this startup was actually like really unicorn. They're making like $1 billion. Yes, there are startups like really in this unicorn list. So that will be helping you to understand. Or maybe work-life balance is super important for you is because also you can now relocate. You're looking for remote work and such. You're gonna be learning a lot about like these kind of pieces that will be helping you to make informed decision through the things that you learn in these curiosity conversations. Referral is super important. Again, I don't know who is in these calls and then your industries, but majority of you, if you're talking about the government, that could be perhaps like a little bit looking a little bit different when it comes to referrals. But no matter what, please ask for referrals without saying referrals. Hey, Yasir, thank you so much for that conversation we had a few months ago. And then I noticed that this morning there is a position available in your organization. It seems like you are not the hiring manager, but I was wondering if you know who that person is. I was wondering, based on what I was like telling you about myself and then my ideas about this pivoting, my skills, my passions. Do you have any advice for me? Can you look at my resume in this 5 minutes? And so then you apply for a job. So that is not even end when you apply for a job. Believe it or not, in some industries and some roles, following up, it's going to be making a huge difference. Always follow up. And then let's go to competitive edges. As I mentioned earlier, function, industry, and geography. So if value proposition is important, if what we bring in the table is important, and we need to show people that we are different than rest of the candidates in this pool, you need to know your competitive edges. So function, industry, and geography, in simple terms, what like really the roles you're looking for, that is our function: program manager, data analyst, policy analyst role, strategy consultant, and such. And then industries is NGO consulting, global trade, and geographies, I'm looking for, the DC, maybe remote, maybe Europe. Okay. So have you ever asked yourself this question, or even like in your research, did you notice that program managers in NGO will be looking so different, perhaps program managers in other industries? So you have to do your research. Again, looking at the job descriptions, reading them very carefully, looking at people's LinkedIn, looking at the ChatGPT and ask some questions based on your resume. How are you matching with what they are looking for? 3 to 5 must-haves from these industries, from these employers. This is how you're going to be showcasing them competitive edges. I ask sometimes this question, but I'm not going to do that right now, is because I'm already maybe behind my, the timing. But how many resume this person? Let's say that this is one person competitive edges matrix and table. How many resume this person will need? The answer is 27, technically, 27 resumes. Nope. I'm suggesting you to go with the prototypes. If you remember earlier, designer mindset, prototypes. Come up with 3 different prototypes, 3 different resume prototypes. One is for program manager, one is data analyst, policy analyst, one is a strategy consultant. And then focus on what like really they are looking for when it comes to skills and experiences, all that tools and knowledge. And then you can show what your competitive edge is for each one of them, instead of having one single massive resume. So why we are using the FIG, I believe that kind of like I mentioned, but narrowing down your job search, so your applications will be way more intentional. You're gonna be able to showcase what is unique about you. And then like really it's gonna be helping you to that networking and industry alignment, is because it's gonna be way more intentional, definitely increasing the job satisfaction. I promise you on that. Again, prototype of the resumes, you're gonna be getting more interviews and such. This is a very simple employer tracking sheet. As you can see that you're gonna be putting your function and industry scenarios, so FIG scenarios. I will suggest don't go more than 3. I put it 2 over here just for the sake of like, the big screen. What are the company culture requirements you're looking for? Is that the work-life balance? Is that the innovation? Is that, I don't know, the employee development, professional development, whatever that looks like? What are your values? Just like really list all of those, and then look at how it's aligning. But also this piece, my competitive edges. Again, earlier we discussed what is unique about you. And then you see how those other things will be aligning with each other. What is missing in this picture, and how you can prep yourself in the coming weeks or months before you start applying. And then this, the second bottom half of, this, the tracking, the Excel, it's going to be about your progress. Again, you're going to know your companies is because you're going to research about them, the problem that, they're solving that, aligning with yours, industries, the search method. But also I'm suggesting you to connect with so many different people to have your curiosity conversations, not just recruiters, not just like friends in the same situation like yourself, but LinkedIn connections. Go in and start, connecting with people, expanding that network, but also alumni, people like, graduated from the same, maybe the schools like yourself, and then look at the postings, all that are the positions, and take notes. You need to look at the similarities and then differences, what is working, what is not. All those patterns will be helping you tremendously. Why be using the tracker? Kind of I mentioned, it's going to be helping you to get organized. It is going to be helping you to who to follow up, and then how you can expand that networking, again, to see that are the strategies working or not. And then 100%, it's going to be like really enhancing your motivation, is because, again, you're going to be easily seeing all that progress in one single page. Hopefully it wasn't like too rushy, but the action plan is like, again, go in and work on your value proposition, fix scenarios, searching for those aspirational organizations. We have like so many AI tools that can help you with your resume prototypes. When it comes to identifying connections, I mentioned it's very important for curiosity conversation. LinkedIn is definitely your former colleagues, yes, but also one hub platform we have. I believe that it's open for, the alumni, like yourself, or if you're a student that you're already using, and have as many curiosity conversations as you can, and then happy applying at the end. Hope this helps in your journey. And Michelle, I'm turning over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Cesar. So we talked about pivoting, doing research, really understanding the process. So you can see that this process of career searching and pivoting and branding, there's no one way of going through it, right? It's an iterative process. We are addressing certain topics in a certain order that is most kind of natural to go through. But again, it's an iterative process. I see there's a hand raised. We aren't, since this is a webinar, please use either the Q&A feature or the chat. We're happy to address things there. So now let's think about, for those that are indeed pivoting from one industry to another or one function to another, branding or rebranding. Even if you are on the same trajectory, it's always good to go back and refresh. What am I talking about myself? Am I giving the same pitch that I gave 5 years ago? That's not likely going to be the same person that you are now as a professional. And so it's always good to go back and refresh your pitch and your brand. So now let's get into some tactical ways of doing that. So I like the term, what makes you sticky? As Yasir said earlier, your brand is what people talk about when you're not in the room, what people say about you when you are not there. So they're representing you for you. So it's what sticks in their mind. Because there's so many times, and I've been career coaching for over 15 years now, and people say, I have to memorize the absolute perfect thing and give out this beautiful script that I've written so eloquently. People aren't going to remember absolutely every single word that you say. They're going to remember those key points that relate to them and what they need. So all the research that we talked about earlier in this session, you want to think about, what do I have that meets what that employer, that industry, that job function, what is that unique need, and how do I match? So you're kind of choosing that. So connect what you have with what they need. Be authentic to your style. I'm going to give some suggestions on how to start crafting your pitch, your brand. There's a lot of great resources out online, but really look at what are the reasons why people recommend certain things, and be authentic to what you feel like you can do to best represent yourself. There's going to be some wild examples out there that just may not seem natural for you. So be authentic to what you have and what you feel comfortable promoting. Do not create a script. Do not memorize. that's going to just trip you up, and you're not going to be able to adjust it. And prototype is, she said, you're not going to be able to adjust it based on the conversation. So you want to know, what are my key points for what this employer, this industry, this function, this particular job, what are they looking for? And what are my key points that I want to say to address this? And essentially, you are telling your story. All right, so I'm seeing in the chat and in the Q&A, some folks will say, I'd be happy to be a reference. Do you recommend a list of references with your application or your resume? So references are always available upon request. You want to make sure you have references that are available. You don't need to put references available upon request on your resume because it's implied. If they ask for it, you will provide them. A lot of online applications will ask you to input the details and the data of your referrals. Sometimes if a person says, I'd be happy to be a reference, they might have an employee referral program with their school. For example, Johns Hopkins has an employee referral program where employees will get money. It's not a lot of money like the corporate businesses do, but sometimes there's a substantial financial reward if I'm an employee and I refer Yasir to my company and they get hired, I would then receive an award. So sometimes when you do these curiosity conversations, informational interviews, and someone's like, oh, this person's really solid and I'd love, I think they might actually get hired. I'd love to be the person that refers them into the company so that I might be able to get that kind of reward. So, but I recommend having just a kind of a separate sheet, a referral document, just so you know who those references are and in what context they know you. So great question. So if we can go to the next slide. So some questions. So as we think about that rebranding, thinking about how do I tell my story, whether you are recently laid off, whether you're furloughed and looking for another opportunity, or whether you're just looking for another opportunity and you're still in your current role and just looking for something else or looking to advance. Here are some questions just to get you thinking. So as you go through your reflection, look at past performance reviews. So what does your boss or former boss, what do they say that you do well? What's been written about you in performance evaluations? What's been discussed in meetings about like, wow, someone was really impressed with what you did. Here's why. Make note of those skills. So write down, what are these things that keep popping up in my evaluations, verbal or written? On the flip side, what do your colleagues and peers say you do well? So what your boss sees or a former boss might see of you, your colleagues might see a totally different side of you. So what are they saying that you do well? And so make note of that. If there's starting to be some overlap, hey, here is, that key branding point. So notice, like, kind of create your own little word cloud. What things keep coming up, that word gets bigger and bigger. And note, is that a word that you want to be known for? Is that a skill that you want to highlight? And so this is also kind of thinking about that branding control. Do I want to be known as the person that always says yes to things and that they can rely on? Or do I want to have a little bit more control over the projects that I do? So think about, these words that are coming up in this reflection and whether you want to move forward with them. In your groups, so whether you are current student, part-time student, full-time student, an alum, in your academic groups, in your work experience groups, what strengths do you see that you're bringing to the team consistently that others are relying on you for? What skills and tasks come easy to you, come so naturally to you that you think, oh, everyone can do this. That's not necessarily the case. If you're seeing that you keep being the person that does something, that's because it's coming naturally to you and you're offering that skill and that strength up to the group, where others might not have that ability or that natural skill and talent. So again, thinking about what comes easy comes easy to you? What are you being known for? And starting, that's a good starting point for thinking about how do I want to sell myself, to brand myself moving forward. So then if you are still a little bit stuck, there is AI. So you can use ChatGPT as a brainstorming partner. So, you want to use AI and ChatGPT with caution. And that's why I say as a brainstorming partner. You don't want to just take what ChatGPT spits out at you and say, great, put it online, good to go, and I'm done. It's a place to start thinking about it. So I put at the top a prompt that you could put in to just kind of get that process started. So for those that might be online, I know we have one phone and caller. The prompt is, help me define my personal brand identity as a blank, specializing in blank for blank. So this is where we're putting in that specificity of what is the profession, what is the job's function and job title that you're seeking? What is the industry that you're targeting? What are the target audiences? Is it government? Is it small businesses? Is it mid-sized companies? Are they NGOs or global brands? So thinking about your target audience. Asking ChatGPT, highlight my unique skills, values, and what sets me apart from competitors. And then you can, and in the prompt say, use this resume for reference, copy and paste your resume into the prompt. So that way it can see what you've put together. So you might want to make sure you're updating your resume before doing this to make sure it's accurate. But that helps you start thinking about what are the words that I can say in combination that might help me kind of get out of this stuck mentality. So providing detail, providing context and background really helps ChatGPT. Asking it to iterate, so not just taking that first session, but reading what it gives you and then ask it more prompts to finesse it a bit more. Maybe there are strengths in the slide I showed earlier about like, okay, so I'm really known for this and I really want this captured in my brand because I feel like it really aligns with me. Make sure I put that word, incorporate that word throughout the brand. So customize it, iterate it. And then you might look at the combinations. So as you go through the iterations, there might be pieces of each answer that you can piece together to kind of come up with your brand. And then as always with ChatGPT, edit the results into your own voice. So look at the tone and say, is this something I would naturally say if I go into an interview or a networking conversation or curiosity conversation? Is this something that would naturally come from me? So if you're stuck, use ChatGPT as a way to move yourself forward. Another way, once you kind of got these ideas, you've got the brainstorm, you've got kind of the brand, we want to build a pitch. So a lot of times your elevator pitch or your value proposition moves into the elevator pitch is for when you go in an interview and they say, tell me about yourself. And I can say in the 15 years I've been career coaching, that is the question that people are most scared of answering. They're like, I can talk about my research. I can talk about, this specialized function that I do. I don't want to talk about myself. So it's the thing that scares most people, and that's totally natural. But there are strategies to help you move forward with that. I will say, if you are a current Johns Hopkins student, you have access to LinkedIn Learning, and this framework comes from, I put at the bottom in the source, Pitching Yourself for Opportunity LinkedIn Learning course. If you're an alum and you don't have free access to LinkedIn Learning through Hopkins, maybe you have it on your own, great, look it up. If you don't, this framework really kind of encapsulates the course, so you don't necessarily have to look it up, but it's great to give more details if you do have access. So this framework is really helpful, especially with those that are pivoting into a new area, to really express and capture what you're wanting to do. So the start of the pitch is leading with your destination. What is it that you want to do next? You don't want to kind of go into the reiterating your resume, turning that out of like, I was a student at Johns Hopkins, I worked here, I worked there, and moving forward. So using that destination, what am I wanting to do next? So what are you excited about? What are you trying to achieve today that you're to get you to tomorrow? After you state your destination, so maybe that destination is, I'm interested in working in consulting, financial consulting, or management consulting, or hospital administration, whatever it might be. Then you go into your backstory. So this is where you can either, if you are on a standard trajectory, which is not pretty standard anymore, you can talk about your relevant experience that's brought you to this destination. Or if you are indeed pivoting, think about all of those transferable skills from your past, whether it's work experience, whether it's academic projects, volunteer work, all the things that kind of make you as a holistic person. Think about those transferable skills that would apply to that destination, that would apply to this next opportunity. And so you're going to talk about that. So starting with your destination, because that is going to be the reason why someone's going to be interested in listening to the rest of your pitch. Then you bring in that backstory. Here's all the things I have that are relevant to that. And you're connecting it, you're making everything fit together. And so how do these transferable skills, how does this relevant experience match that destination? I forget the exact term, but you think about people, if we can go back here, you have to hear something multiple times for it to really stick in your head. So the connecting the dots is bringing you back to that destination of really reinforcing, here's what I want to do, here's why I want to do it, and why I'm qualified for this. And then you can customize it based off of the conversation that you're having. So those are some very tactical approaches to pitching yourself, to branding yourself, thinking through your brand. I do want to highlight in the chat, someone said, if you have a library card, then you likely would have free access to LinkedIn Learning. So if you aren't a current Hopkins student and you don't have LinkedIn Learning, check out your local library and see if getting a local library card will also give you access to LinkedIn Learning. That's a great tip. I want to highlight that tonight we have Dawn Graham, Dr. Dawn Graham, who is a Hopkins alumna. She is an expert career coach. She wrote the book Switchers. And licensed psychologist, former corporate recruiter. She is going to be speaking with us virtually from 5 to 6. The session will not be recorded. I'm going to ask one more time to see if it can be, but it likely will not be recorded. So I really recommend joining us live for a moderated Q&A with Dr. Dawn Graham this evening from 5 to 6 Eastern. And again, you can sign up for that in the Adapt, Pivot, and Persist website. And with that is the end of the topic. We're going to open up to Q&A, but while we wait for questions to come in, I do want to highlight we have more sessions coming up. So next week we have open networking chat. So inviting current students and alumni that want to support each other through their transition. There's great power in working with community and getting insights from others that are experiencing something similar to you, or may have experienced something like a layoff or a reduction in force in the past. So definitely come to those in the off weeks. The next topic series will be tactical actions on retooling your documents and interview prep. So all of the work that we're doing up to now, changing your mindset, that thinking about your pivot and rebrand, how do you apply that into your documents and preparing for interviews? And then ending with actionable networking. And again, networking is so important. Definitely something to attend. And with that, looking to see, we've got a prompt. Definitely come in to see Dr. Dawn. She has LinkedIn learning course on switching careers. So she has many LinkedIn learning courses. She was actually just out in California recording some new LinkedIn learning courses recently. So definitely come. Let me see. Okay, we got the Q&A. All right. I was laid off a little over a year ago. Do you have any advice about how to frame that when talking about your brand? Yes. I've been talking for a while. I don't know if you see or if you want to talk about that, or I can answer it.
We may have different perspectives, Michelle. So I believe that it's gonna be video on this. You know, the coaching is because there's no one size fits all. For me, this is what I always say: in either networking conversations, curiosity conversations, interviews, recruiters, HR, hiring manager, you name it. Do not share anything that will be helping you to get the role. So the meaning that if they don't ask why there is a gap in your resume and then what happened with this, the last role, there is no reason to share extra information. That's my humble opinion. Given that these in particular these times you are not alone. Whoever asked that question, there are like so many thousands of people out there. So I believe that it's not going to be hurting anything to not focus on. But what we need to focus on is just like really what we discussed, that competitive edges, that branding, what you're bringing to the table. So I will say that just focus on that positive side of it, not like really the story that doesn't even make sense to share, is because again, like they are hiring you to do your job and then help employers to get the next level and then show them why they need to hire you, and then do not share anything extra. And then interviews, this is what I was saying. I'm going to wrap up with that. Interview is not about you. I've been keep saying that. People sometimes do not like that, but interviews are not about you. Interviews are about them. Sometimes I hear that two-way streets. No, interviews is about the employers. Okay, so that's why only give them what they want to hear. And I'm going to pause there. But Michelle, you may have different perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And this kind of also, there's a comment in the chat of like, what role do layoffs and furloughs play in the pitch? Can it be used to pivot into a career as part of your story? It really depends on you and what you're comfortable sharing. You know, same advice I would give to someone who is on medical leave, for a variety of reasons that you might be switching or pivoting or looking for something after a long period of time out of work, as someone asked. Some really great advice I've received in the past is not to bring up, not to personally volunteer those tough moments in your career that might, you might say all the right things, you might have all the great nonverbals, but deep inside, something might be kind of coming out when you hit on a hot topic or something that's personally a nerve for you. And so you don't necessarily have to volunteer it, or if you do, you could just touch upon it lightly, if it was a medical leave for personal reasons, I had to focus on my family, my health, and now I'm excited to move back into this role. Here's what I've done in the meantime to freshen up and sharpen up my skills. So same thing with layoffs, furloughs, is, you can touch upon it very lightly, but really focusing on that destination. It's not what's happened to you, but it's what you're, you could use it as the catalyst for switching, or you could just say, I've really enjoyed the work that I've done. And through my personal and professional growth of that work, I've really discovered that I want to, that this is an area that I'm ready to grow into. So again, don't have to touch upon it. If you do, just very lightly, because you don't want that to be the focus. All right. Question, So for Yasir, I was wondering if we can review the competitive advantages slide. So if we want to reshare the slides and go back to that. So they're interested in two different positions, an instructional designer and management consulting internships. But their current position is a library assistant. So they're making a big pivot from a library assistant to either instructional designer, management consultant. Their degree is in org leadership and just wanting to move into that field. So how would this person use competitive advantages?
Yeah, there is this website called Own It Online. I believe that I will suggest this person maybe to visit that, and then on the search for whatever the functions that they are looking for to better understand the skills and the tasks and technology will be used in such roles. But as I mentioned earlier as well, the LinkedIn profiles of like some folks that maybe that in this role, looking at some job descriptions, and then just like combine all of them, ask ChatGPT, what are you trying to do? Exactly what you put on, I believe, the Q&A, which I couldn't see on my end, but ask ChatGPT what, that is, suggesting you to compile all of those. And then I will suggest, if you're talking about two different functions, then definitely two different resume prototypes. Then look at here, like this is just the example, like how that could be like, the different when it comes to that 3 to 5, must-haves. And then, they have two different prototypes and two different competitive edges like you bringing to the table when you're applying for roles. I don't know if it is helpful, but Own It Online, and I might need to get that on the chat, but right now when I'm sharing, I cannot do it though. I don't know, is that helpful?
Yeah, I think, that's exactly is if, doing your own analysis of like, what are the reading, like, my typical advice is like, take 5 job descriptions. So you kind of have an aggregate of what are skills that are coming up that you're reviewing and analyzing for each of those roles, and then apply your those transferable skills into those roles. ChatGPT is a way of also backing that up and just verifying your work. So it's always good to kind of put your own personal analysis on it. ChatGPT can help you support with that. So yeah, great. Another question. All right, so I've done subcontracting roles, 2 to 4 weeks at a time. So subcontracting here and there at different orgs over the last 10 years. Is it better to list specific organizations similar to, how you might just list full-time jobs, or summarize subcontracting under my own business, self-employed name? And so context, this person is pivoting from an assistant professor role in higher ed to HR, talent management in different sectors. So I would say, again, with all of this, there's no one right answer. But, do what makes sense for what you're pivoting to. So I would recommend, if you were a subcontractor, you could put that as kind of the role. And if you were doing the kind of similar accomplishments, I don't like to say tasks and responsibilities because we try to avoid those. But if you're thinking about the work that you did over those 10 years, is it similar work throughout, no matter that company or who your client was? Yeah, I think you could list that as your own, not necessarily a business, but you could just say self-employed, subcontractor, if you don't have an LLC or anything like that, and then just talk about the accomplishments as it relates to the different clients you served.
If I may chime in, Michelle, so sometimes we have, that tendency to include everything in our resumes, and you are not alone. Whoever is asking that question, sometimes even like we find ourselves in that, trap, I would say. But how about if we, maybe just have that mindset shift? Oh, I have a LinkedIn. Maybe I can go ahead and then tell this story about like these 10 years on LinkedIn, or digital portfolio. I can have maybe cover letters and even like more, like maybe the pictures and then some stories about that. And then that will be my supplemental, the thing to apply with along my resume. I saw success on that. And then number 3, this is also like maybe going back to the question that they asked earlier about references. I will suggest when we hear the word references, we focus on, oh, that 3 to 5 people like HR is calling in the reference. But I learned a few years ago about the character references. So what I did, for instance, when I applied JHU, which I mean, I believe that what I went through the process, so I can say, I got like 10, 15 references from not my references. So not that 3 to 5 people, but completely different. My colleagues, my students, believe it or not. And then again, the subcontract, the like, the side gig that I was doing, and then asking those people as well. So I will say that maybe for this person, that 10 years, get that quote unquote character references, like references from those people, and include that into your portfolio. So that will be a very, very powerful application. So resume is not the only channel to impress people. This is what I'm trying to say. Hope that makes sense.
And the resume's purpose is to get someone interested in a conversation with you. So again, and this is something that I think we both deal with often, is I want to list everything. I want to put everything on my resume. Only put the stuff that is going to meet that destination, that is going to serve where you're going next. What is, and I tell my students all the time, like, what will a prospective employer care about? If they're, if you're talking about in great detail a job from 15 years ago, and you're only having a couple of bullets about a job that you're just started, they're going to care more about the job that you're currently in than something from 15 years ago. So you need to start trimming down, reducing it down to what are 1 to 2 key accomplishments, and moving into, or removing things totally. Because just because it's not on your resume doesn't mean you can't talk about it. If something comes up in an interview that's relevant, but it's not on your resume, you can still bring it up. So the resume doesn't have to list everything. It should be very concise, very detailed to what that prospective reader is interested in. Which is why, if you are moving, so that example of interested, and I answered it, so I don't see it anymore, but moving into management consulting or instructional designer, those are 2 very different functions to go into. So you're going to have probably 2 very different resumes, prototypes. And so you're going to be talking about your past experiences as it relates to the skills needed for each of those jobs. All right. Well, we are approaching time anyways. I don't see any more Q&As, and I think we hit all the chat questions. So thank you all for joining. Again, please join us tonight from 5 to 6 with Dr. Dawn Graham. We'll be kind of talking about her book Switchers, and she'll be taking a lot of questions and answers from the webinar. So we hope to see you there, and we hope to see you at our future sessions. Please, we brought this up nimbly, so we have a survey in the chat. If you could take just a couple minutes to fill that out, we would be most grateful. And with that, thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.